people's expectations getting out of hand.
Yeah.
Really fast.
Yeah, no, it's usually pretty clear by the because we'll sit down and talk for at least an hour before they're ready to before I even make the offer of what we would need to do. And so it's a good point though. I haven't had a problem with it yet, but if you're not overly clear, you could get yourself in trouble. Absolutely. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first one was when you were at Anderson, did you ever see yourself as an entrepreneur?
Probably not. Although
because you've been wanting to sprint.
Right. Well, and the reason I took the Anderson job, I got several other offers out of college, and my background was mechanical aerospace engineering, so I actually got some really cool offers out of college. I got one to work on the space program, to work on the space station, which, I was like, man, that's the coolest thing ever. But you go down there, you go to Houston, you talk to the guys that are actually doing it, and the reality is when you're working on the space station, you're working on one module out of 1,000 for the next 5 years. And oh, by the way, if you ever want to get promoted, somebody's going to have to die because nobody ever leaves. And so, it was one of those things where, okay, I don't want to go that route. And Anderson offered the opportunity to work on lots of different projects, lots of different types of clients. And so there was an element of the entrepreneurial piece of it, but it was never, I don't think it ever crossed my mind leaving college, I'm going to go start my own thing. And I think the difference, you guys have a class like this. There were no classes like this. There was nobody talking about entrepreneurialism when I graduated, which on one hand, to me it doesn't seem that long ago. I'm sure to you all it seems like a long time ago, but I graduated in '89. So I wasn't necessarily thinking I'm going to go start my own business.
And then my second question is, I'm more familiar with the consulting hourly rate, but are you looking at like a retainer model for your clients?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Because it sounds like that you're available when they want to call you.
Yep. And I purposely did it that way because I don't want to track hours.
I know.
And typically the clients don't want to pay by the hour either. And what's been interesting is even though I offer, hey, call me anytime, most of them don't. They're all too busy. They have other stuff going on. Occasionally they will, and I'm happy to do it, but it works out pretty well. So there's the amount of time that I'm actually meeting with them, and then I'll do prep and I'll do follow-up around each meeting. And then other than that, it's kind of just, okay, if they call, I'll respond. But it works out pretty well. So it gives me enough control that I can figure out, okay, is this priced appropriately? And the first couple of years, I wasn't charging enough. That's just kind of how it is. You start out the gate, and you're like, what do I think somebody will pay me for this? And you try it out and then see. And as you get more clients, then you can start charging more money. Other questions?
Shawn, I think what's different about your business from the other speakers we've had that have come in to speak is that you get to work with other business owners. So you have the other people who come in have spoken about their business, but your business is helping other businesses.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is why it's fun.
It's very fascinating. So, again, some of the people in the class are thinking about starting a business themselves. Some are just fascinated with, what small businesses are. You've had enough experience, and I've been in one of your peer groups and had a really good time with those guys. Can you think about one or two traits that when you're either in a group or a consulting format, and this person's going to make it, and one or two traits you're like, this person needs to be told
he's going to be in trouble,
that they need to go back and do something else?
Yeah, that's a good one. The traits for success, I think you have to be willing to learn. So it never ends. I've got a whole shelf of business books. Stephen is one of the few people that I know that reads more than I do. But I've got a whole shelf of books, and as soon as I finish a few of them, I find another one, and constantly looking for what are new ideas, what's a better thing out there. If you're not willing to learn, you're going to get run over. Especially today, it's amazing to me the number of business owners I talk to that are still operating the way they did 5 years ago. Website's the same, their second cousin Joey's friend, threw together a website for them. It's awful. and they assume that they don't need to be found online in order to get business in today's world. They don't know what social media is. They don't know they don't know any of that stuff. You won't survive this. So I think you have to constantly be willing to learn, because the world is moving faster than ever, and if you're not keeping up, you're going to be in trouble. And I think the other thing in terms of a positive trait that you have to have, yeah, there you go. Yeah. The other trait that you have to have is that I think you have to have the confidence. You have to believe that you are offering something that people want. I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of selling something, whether it's retail or whatever it might be. But if you're selling a product that you don't buy into, man, that is the absolute hardest thing for anybody to do. I mean, it's just soul sucking. You end the day and you're like, oh my God, I don't think I can get up tomorrow. I mean, it is the worst thing ever. When you're a business owner, it's your product. You have to decide, what it is you want to do. So, it's one of those things where you need that confidence, and probably the only way to get that confidence is the fact that you're pretty excited about what you're doing. And you've got at least enough, internal proof that it works, that you're not just making it up. Because my experience is that prospects can tell like that if you're not certain, if you don't have that confidence, and they'll just walk away. There's way too many other choices. So those would probably be the two that I'd pick in terms of succeeding. In terms of failing, there's just so many. Where do you start?
I think, why don't we reverse? I'm thinking of one guy in particular who ended up going back into the corporate world, who was in a group with us, and being unwilling to learn / unwilling to listen to other people's advice. And
yes, and that's actually that's a good example. And I see that a lot, not necessarily with my clients, but with people that I run into who are business owners who are trying to sell like it was 5 or 10 years ago, and they know all the answers, and they, at the end of the day, the terminology that I use, for me at least, they're not coachable. And so those business owners that aren't coachable, not that they're necessarily guaranteed to fail, but if they really believe they already have all the answers and they don't need to know anything else, they're certainly on a path that's not a positive one. I definitely think that's one of them. And then I think the other one that stands out to me are the people that are kind of in it for the wrong reasons. So they decide, I don't want to work for somebody else. I'm not really passionate about anything, so I'll just kind of roll this thing out there, and I'll sell Vima or I'll sell some multi-level marketing type product, and I'm in business for myself. No, you're not. You're selling a product, you're trying to sell a product, but if you don't really have some sort of passion, if you're not excited about it, you're not going to make it, because it's too much of an uphill climb to get there. So.
Do you have a specific type of business you cater to, or are a lot of the tools the same no matter what kind of business it is, or where do you?
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, at the end of the day, everybody has customers. Everybody has, accounts receivable. Everybody has accounts payable. So there's an awful lot of things that, regardless of the product or service, that are very similar across a lot of businesses. Having said that, it's a lot easier for me to be able to work with somebody where I have something else to bring to the table, whether that's expertise or an opinion or whatever it might be. So my background was primarily in technology and professional services. So that tends to be probably about 2/3 of my customers fall into that category. So something related to technology, maybe something related to a professional services type of firm. I've got a guy that runs a lawn care company, so it does translate either way. But it's certainly easier to have those conversations. It's easier for me to just say, oh yeah, absolutely, I've been there, done that, and that makes the selling process easier. The actual work that we do probably tends to be pretty similar once we get into it. So it's important to have a story to tell, though. which is why Made to Stick is such a great book. You've got to have some sort of story. What's your angle? How are you explaining to people what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's different from somebody else? Because those conversations become really hard. What do? I'm a CPA. Really? You and 10,000 other people within 10 square miles. If that's all you are as a CPA and that's what you're pushing, it's a tough conversation. If there's not some angle that you have, what makes you different? What makes you stand out? Why should I care? Why did you become a CPA? Whatever it might be, there's got to be some angle there. And so you need some sort of story to tell. Other questions? Back row's been quiet.
I mean, you may sort of mention a little bit, but and how you started this off to be a lifestyle business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you grow more, like as you see you're succeeding and you have 15 individual clients that you deal with, and say your partner has 15,
yeah.
You guys have kind of reached your cap? Are you going to hire more people, or how do you separate yourself from the business? Because it sounds like right now you're the face. I mean, for the most part, people want to work with you, not necessarily Aspire. They want to work with you.
Yep.
So,
yeah, that's the experiment, right? I mean, that's the that's kind of the turn that I made in the last year. Was okay. It makes sense that if I could create a footprint, because as much as I network, as much as I get out, if it's only one person, you can only make this much of a ripple. If it's 5 or 6 people and we're all good and we're all active, you can make a pretty big ripple. And so that becomes the goal of, okay, if Aspire actually stands for something other than my personal brand, then I think you've got something going. How possible or practical is that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. On paper, I could draw it out and say, well, here's how it should work. In practice, finding the right people and doing the right things, I think that's going to be the trick. But it's fun to try, right? And meanwhile, because I've been able to hit enough of a plateau, I have the leeway to be able to experiment. Whereas, my first or second year, I was still just trying to, make enough money to be able to get through the year. Now I've got enough that I can kind of balance it out, and it's much more comfortable doing it from a position of relative strength than trying to make those changes when you're still struggling.
Well, Shawn, thanks for your time.